Jonathan Sacerdoti is certainly familiar to our viewers as the London-based UK correspondent for I-24 News, but he does plenty of other things as well, including co-hosting a podcast called Peace Talk, together with Moataz Khalil, a Muslim Egyptian journalist, and that's dedicated to coexistence and dialogue. Well, it sounds like just the thing one needs online these days. But when it brought up the October 7th attack on Israel, the social media giant Meta apparently decided the podcast was breaching guidelines on Facebook and censored it, perhaps highlighting what some have charged is a double standard on the platform when it comes to Israel and Jewish content. Here's a bit of the opening of Peace Talk. You get a sense of what we're talking about.
I'm Jonathan Sacerdoti, a Jewish journalist based here in London.
And I am Moataz Khalil, Muslim Egyptian journalist based in London.
Thanks for joining us.
Jonathan, Peace Talk, coexistence, sounds great. But what happened with Facebook? Why would that be objectionable?
Great question. We thought it sounds great, but what do I know? We thought when Miza and I started Peace Talk, it was really a way of us both exploring something that we'd discovered since working together professionally 2 years ago. He's an Egyptian Muslim journalist who's worked for one of Egypt's leading newspapers, who'd come to the UK a couple of years ago to study his master's in Israel studies at SOAS, not known to be the most pro-Israel of institutions here. And he's been studying here since then. That's when we met while I was working on some material which involved Arabic, and he was translating it for me. And since then, we discovered a shared interest in peaceful coexistence and discussions between us from our very different backgrounds. So it was a natural transition from our personal and private discussions to putting it on camera and discussing it in a way that the whole world could hear from not just us, but a variety of other voices, often from around the Middle East, including, you've seen there, Kobi Mikhail, who's familiar to many viewers of I-24, but also Fatima El Harbi, a Bahraini peace activist who's visited Israel herself, is engaged in Holocaust education, even watched that 47-minute film put together by Israel of the Hamas GoPro footage from October the 7th and spoken out very much against it. All these important voices were people we thought the world needed to hear more from. But as soon as I uploaded the Fatima El Harbi episode to Facebook, they actually automatically pulled it and told me that it contravened their rules about dangerous people and organizations, which just seems outrageous, seeing as what we were doing was calling out Hamas's dangerous ideology.
Right, and the reason we're highlighting it, Jonathan, besides the fact we don't want to see you censored, is it's maybe an example of what some see as a much bigger problem, which is a double standard on some of the social media platforms. Facebook, TikTok in particular has been cited. Some have also spoken of Twitter and Instagram, where content which is either supportive of Israel, highlights some of the things, for example, that happened on October 7th, is censored, while much more inflammatory material, which may be directed against Israel or even beyond against Jews, somehow managed to slips through.
Exactly, Caleb. I think that's the issue. When this happened, there seemed to be no good explanations that I could think of. One was that they deliberately pulled this down because it showed Arab voices from around the Middle East who were interested in peaceful coexistence rather than the extremism that we saw from Hamas and the other Muslim Brotherhood affiliates around the region, and from Iran as well, or because it was some sort of algorithmic automated thing that couldn't spot that we were actually critiquing Hamas. I mean, our podcast involved Moataz looking at the Hamas charter in its original Arabic, and then us discussing the nuances of the precise words they used in relation to the protests going on around the world, ridiculous ones like boycotting the fashion store Zara, which has nothing to do with Israel. So bearing that in mind, there was no good solution. Either it was a deliberate thing to censor voices that the world needs to hear more from, or it was an automated thing, which seems able to pull down our podcast covering peaceful coexistence, but not able to spot blatant and outrageous anti-Semitism that seems to get left up on the platforms that Meta runs, even when Jewish people and other people report it en masse. Either way, they don't come out of this well, and it seems that their censorship is heavy-handed, but also indiscriminate.
Right, and finally, because it's happened to many of our guests, and I'm sure to many of your viewers, is there any recourse in this case in dealing again with a massive, I guess, global bureaucracy like Facebook or the company, parent company Meta?
Well, I've put an appeal to Meta. In fact, they have this body called the Oversight Board, which they claim is independent. But of course, it's like sending a complaint into a vacuum. It says you've submitted it and you might hear from them in a few weeks, but they don't promise to look at all cases. So I've rather given up on the idea that they might come round or come to their senses. Certainly on topical matters like what's going on in the Middle East now, it will be a bit too late if they do restore that issue. But viewers can, of course, watch our podcast on YouTube and on Spotify, where I hope they will find it because they didn't pull it down. And we're delighted to be sharing really important voices who are interested in examining the nuances of what's going on in the Middle East rather than some of the more broad sweeped and very black and white visions that are given in parts of the world, like here in the UK.
All right. Well, certainly we hope those viewers find it there and that Facebook comes to recognize crucial differences between content. Jonathan Sacerdoti, co-host of Peace Talk and our correspondent in the UK. Thanks for joining us and Happy New Year's, Jonathan.
Thanks, Caleb. Happy New Year.